What was the sin sacrifice for the whole congregation who sinned? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Leviticus on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Leviticus chapter 4. We're going to be reading from verses 13 to 21. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Leviticus chapter 4, beginning at verse 13. Now, if the whole congregation of Israel sins unintentionally, and the thing is hidden from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done something against any of the commandments of the Lord in anything which should not be done, and are guilty, when the sin which they have committed becomes known, then the assembly shall offer a young bull for the sin, and bring it before the tabernacle of meeting. And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head of the bull before the Lord. Then the bull shall be killed before the Lord. The anointed priest shall bring some of the bull's blood to the tabernacle of meeting. Then the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the veil. And he shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar, which is before the Lord, which is in the tabernacle of meeting. And he shall pour the remaining blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. He shall take all the fat from it and burn it on the altar. And he shall do with the bull as he did with the bull as a sin offering. Thus he shall do with it. So the priest shall make atonement for them, and it shall be forgiven them. Then he shall carry the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. It is a sin offering for the assembly. In our last episode, we discussed the sin sacrifice that was to be offered when the priest sinned. He would take a young bull without blemish and kill it before the door of the tabernacle of meeting. The attending priest would then take some of the blood of the bull and go into the tabernacle and dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it before the veil of the sanctuary 7 times. He would also place some of the blood on the horns of the altar of incense. The rest of the blood was to be poured out before the altar of burnt offering. As for the bull itself, all the internal fat portions were to be removed, just like in the peace offering, and burned on the altar. Whatever was left of the bull, including its dung, was to be taken outside the camp and burned. That the bull was going to be completely burned, allowing nothing of it to be used, showed Israel the seriousness of sins, which should have prevented them from wanting to sin. Moving on now to verse 13, we find the sin sacrifice that was to be offered if the whole congregation sins unintentionally. Again, we find that these sacrifices were for unintentional sins, not ones committed in complete knowledge of and in deliberate rebellion to the laws of God. An example of the sins that might be covered under this category would have been when the nation of Israel sinned when they worshipped the golden calf at Mount Sinai. This was not merely the act of one person. The whole nation was involved and went off into sin. Thus, a sacrifice for sin needed to be offered. Note, though, when the sacrifice for sin was offered, when the sin became known to the congregation. Not all sins are known to us, either through ignorance of the law or ignorance that we committed them. It doesn't mean that we haven't sinned or that God somehow doesn't view it as sin, because he does. Or else, why would we, when we later have knowledge of it, require a sacrifice? It simply means that the sacrifice for sin couldn't be offered until knowledge of the sin came to light, for otherwise a sin sacrifice would need to be continually offered just in case the nation had sinned, but nobody knew about it. No, God was gracious, only requiring the sacrifice once the knowledge of the sin came to light. As for the sacrifice itself, it was very similar to the sin sacrifice of the priest. A bull was required, most likely due to the fact that the elders of the children of Israel should have been leading Israel in the right paths and prevented sins that would defile the whole congregation. When the bull was brought to the tabernacle of meeting, the elders of the congregation, presumably 12, one for each tribe, would place their hand on the head of the bull and kill it before the Lord. The attending priest would then bring some of the blood into the tabernacle, dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it before the veil of the tabernacle 7 times. He would then place some of the blood on the horns of the altar of incense, before the remaining blood was poured out before the altar of burnt offering. The rest of the bull would be dealt with in the same manner as the first bull. The inward fat portions would be burned on the altar, as with the peace offerings, while the entire rest of the bull would be burned outside the camp. This was said to be an atonement for the people, and their sin would be forgiven of them. Again, as we said in previous episodes, this forgiveness was a solemn promise made by God to the people that he would do so, a promise that would be realized when Christ died on the cross For the blood of bulls and goats could not remove sin according to the book of Hebrews. So that's the second category of the sin sacrifice. We'll deal with the third category, the Lord willing, in the next episode. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Leviticus chapter 4, verses 22 to 26, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.